No country for minorities. Iran's ethnicities and their agonies. It's usual for an authoritarian regime, such as Iran's, to oppress and even persecute any political opposition. And it's a well-documented fact that Iran has reacted strongly and forcefully in the face of dissident action. However, the concept of Iranians as an either pro- or anti-government single population is a mistaken concept. While Shiite Muslims and Iranian people are used as synonyms by Tehran, in reality, Iran is a multi-ethnic, multi-religious state wherein the Shiites make up only about half the population. Though the Shiites are undoubtedly Iran's chosen people, as the other 50%, the ethnic and religious minorities, live a largely marginalized, impoverished and oppressed existence. Ever since the revolution, ethnic Kurds, Arabs and Baluchis have been under continuous pressure from the regime. Little has improved for the people in the provinces. They are distinctly second-class citizens in second-class regions. Any attempt to make political, economic or social progress attracts severe and frequent crackdowns by Tehran's security forces. Tehran has designated what many observers see as a simple desire for progress as terrorism and extremism, and through this justified executions, detentions and violent actions. Reporting to the UN Human Rights Council Forum, Abdul Sattar Dashouki, director of the Centre for Baluchistan Studies in London, says, "It is a well-known fact that discrimination in Iran is institutionalized through the constitution. The Iranian regime's policy in Sistan and Baluchistan, and for that matter in other provinces too, is based on racial discrimination, assimilation, linguistic discrimination, religious prejudice and inequality, brutal oppression, deprivation, and exclusion of the people who are the majority in their own respective provinces and regions." Baluch activists continue to call on the international community to intercede on their behalf to stop the Iranian government's systematic harassment of its indigenous people. In the Khuzestan province, the majority are Ahwazi Arabs. Iran's most numerous ethnic Arabs, they face severe oppression too. Despite the region being the centre of Iran's hydrocarbon wealth, with 80% of its resources, the community endures abject poverty. The region has never had an ethnic Arab governor. Indeed, most officials are Shiite, with strong connections to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC. Recently, the Ahwaz Human Rights Organization announced the deaths of 4 more political prisoners executed in the Sepidar prison, where, according to Iran Human Rights Monitor, inmates live in unbearable and inhuman conditions. One Ahwazi Arab prisoner, Saleh Ahmed, luckily escaped after his arrest for allegedly distributing anti-regime propaganda. He was studying at the University of Damascus, where he joined the Ahwazi Arab Students Association. He was detained at Imam Khomeini Airport on his return, released, then re-arrested 4 days later, and held at an IRGC centre and released on bail. He fled the country before his trial. Hamid says Tehran's persecution policy is an attempt to wipe out ethnic diversity in Iran. He wants Tehran's quote-unquote ethnic cleansing actions to form part of any international negotiations with Iran. In a statement to Arab News, Hamid said, "Human rights in Iran are a victim of negotiations on the nuclear file and trade between the EU and Iran. When they negotiate, they forget human rights, about the suppression and crackdown. We want human rights cases to be one of the main negotiating points with the regime. There is discrimination in all fields." 16% of Iranians are Azeri, and despite being Shiite Muslims, they also live at-risk lives. Because of their close connection, culturally and linguistically, to their perceived homeland of Azerbaijan, the IRGC keeps a close watch and a tight rein on their lives. The Iranian Azeris strongly protested the weaponry and support Tehran provided to Armenia during the Azerbaijan-Armenian conflict. Many Azeris argue a reunification with Azerbaijan as the only solution. The IRGC take a different view. Azeri activist Yashar Piri was detained, tortured, and finally executed, all after writing graffiti. The same conditions apply to the 10% of the population made up by Iran's Kurds, living largely in the provinces of West Azerbaijan, Kermanshah, Kurdistan, and Ilam. Use of their language and expressions of their culture are outlawed, and the mere suspicion of joining a Kurdish opposition group brings possible torture and warrants the death penalty. Masih Alinejad, an Iranian activist, says, "Persecution of religious minorities is one of the main pillars of this regime." He added, "For the past 42 years now, the regime has not refrained from resorting to arresting, persecuting, executing, and confiscating the properties of these minorities. These minorities have been barred from realizing their full potential and have had limited employment opportunities." Many observers argue that the lives and the frequent deaths of Iran's minorities should form a major part of all and any negotiations with Tehran and should be recognized by the world as crimes against humanity.